Yo, what's up everyone? Kyrios here, and today we're going to go over the deep dive of TIAN. Now, results are a little inconclusive, and I'm going to tell you something right up front, is his matrices are pretty cracked, but we're going to cover that in the secondary video. On this video, we're going to cover the rotation, we're going to cover the star power upgrades, and some team composition, and see if we can answer the question, is 𝙀𝙓 better than TIAN, or is TIAN better than 𝙀𝙓, or maybe a combination of the two? If you guys can't hit that like and subscribe, let's get started. All right, first things first, we need to set some baselines. Now, we are going to use TIAN's weapon at about level 140, whether it's 0 star, 1 star, 3 star, 5 star, 6 star. And then we're going to use 2 level 0 weapons. And the best way we can do that is by using the EM blade and some combination of the combat blade or whatever weapons we have available. We're going to try and keep those numbers as low as possible, just so we have a really good baseline. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take off all the gear to make sure that we have the lowest amount of crit possible, so that we have a really good baseline on top of that. No matrices on these testing, just pure raw damage. Okay, so another baseline we have to set is that we need to go over his skills briefly. TIAN brings a lot to the table, and there's a lot to take in here. Now, looking at his skills, he gains 2 specific things that we need to be aware of, and that's why we're going to pair at least one other Volt weapon to do all these different tests, is that he gains Volt Sense whenever he uses his skill. And essentially, he scans the other weapons, and whenever there's another Volt weapon, gains a Volt attack by 6% for 25 seconds, stacking up to 2 times if there's 2 other Volt weapons. So we're only going to use one other Volt weapon, just to make sure that we have resonance, and that's a pretty good baseline right there. And then he also gets Electrified Entity when unleashing any Volt weapon discharge, and we're going to unleash his. It's going to do Volt area damage equal to 5% of missing HP. So when we do these tests, we're going to do our best to make sure that we're at 100% life, just to make sure that we have a good baseline as well. But that's probably not the most optimal way to use them. So going into the rotation. The rotation that we're going to test 5 different rotations here. All right, so going into the rotation, we're going to test 5 different rotations. First one on the docket is left click spam. That's going to give us our baseline. Has 6 attacks, very easy to execute. Next up, we have the aerial attack spam, where you're going to attack multiple times and he's going to slam into the ground. Probably not the easiest aerial attack to do, but we just want to make sure we get those numbers. Next up, we have the left click to hold. Now, this one is going to be, we're going to left click a few times, and then we're going to hold into that spin move just to see what kind of damage we can get. We're going to get about 3 to 4 attacks in, and then spin it up. Next up, we have the left click hold spam. Now, since the left click spam takes about 3 to 4 seconds to execute all 6 attacks, we're going to go ahead and do left click hold spam at least twice, because it only takes about 1.5 seconds to execute to be able to compare those numbers. And then the next one we have is the left click dodge. Now, this one we're going to do 3 to 4 attacks, and then we're going to dodge attack into that, because TIAN gets a specific buff every 4 to 5 attacks that allows him to do additional Volt attack damage based on a dodge attack. So we're just going to test that one out too. All right, that brings us over to our fancy dancy spreadsheet. You guys know I love spreadsheets, and these are very napkin mathy. Now, if we take the numbers that we got on those previous little instances of attacking, we'll have our left click all the way through our left click dodge. And those numbers you can see here are listed ranging from 22.5 all the way down to 18.5. Now, the left click spam was the best damage that we were able to do, and that might have just been because it was the most consistent. Aerial attack felt very awkward. Left click hold did not feel that great either. Now, left click spam is probably your highest damage technically on paper when there's more than one enemy. So if there's multiple enemies, this is probably your number 1 attack move, is just left hold, left hold, left hold. So please keep that in mind, even though you see the negative 15%. I'll put a note in there a little bit later. And then the left click dodge spam. Now, I do want to state this real quick, is that Lin Yi supplies a very specific buff to double Volt weapons, where you have a 65% chance to not use a dodge attack. And that dodge attack that TIAN is able to supply, that buff, can be pretty powerful if you're able to just like dodge 5 times in a row. Now, I don't think this is very viable until you have Fenrir, because Fenrir's dodge attack is very, very strong. And but we can't really test that right now. So just please keep that in mind and have an open mind that some of the perks of TN aren't going to be realized until we have other characters, or depending on who you pair with TN. All right, that brings us to the star testing power of the guide. Now, in this part of the guide, we are going to test just purely TN with that same setup of weapons with no matrices and no gear. No Simulacron, I didn't mention that earlier, but none of that either. So we're going to test the 0-star, the 1-star, the 3-star, the 5-star, and the 6-star. I do want to get everyone's expectations in line. Not the greatest star upgrades in my opinion, but we'll talk through those upgrades on the other side. So let's do a quick montage, and then I'll see you guys on the spreadsheet side. Okay, that was fun. So now that we're on the spreadsheet side and we have all that data in line, there's a little TLDR I want to bring up. TN is very hard to calculate. Now, probably in a simulated run where you can just parse all the numbers together, probably okay. But in a very practical run of testing things the way I test it, it's very hard to test TN. There's so many dynamics, like based on his max HP, based on how much HP he has lost, depending on how many times you've switched weapon, how many skills you've done. And in a lot of these tests, we don't really switch weapons and we don't do skills because that's not the easiest thing to track. So I should probably do a video at some point that just is like, hey, here's some raw gameplay. It was just kind of how he feels, because that's more in line with the way that we should test this character. But just going quickly over stars, we have his 1-star where he gains superconductor, where he gains max HP. This is really good because the more max HP he has, the more he can lose, which gives him more volt attack for a lot of his skills where he sacrifices his own life. His S3 release any volt weapon skill or discharge to get 2 charges and gain hyper body at 8 superconductor stacks. Hyper body is great. Doesn't really bring a whole lot to the table in my opinion for S3. Unless you can go all the way to S5, which each superconductor stack increases final damage by 1%. I don't know why I'm saying S5. A5 is what I mean, Awakening. Then Awakening 6 is really the cream of the crop, where using his skill will allow every other Volt weapon sent, so 2 other weapons, to gain 10% Volt damage boost for 25 seconds. So he gets an additional 20% damage, and this works for every other weapon you have on there. You put Fenrir in there, you put Crow in there, you put whatever you in there. Works really good. You can see we have the baseline here, which is 0 stars. Attack damage, skill hit. We have passive, we have ultimate, we have dodge. And there isn't any negatives across the board. At 1 star, you can see damage does go up, skill goes up, passive goes up, ultimate very briefly, dodge mainly because that's just the star stat upgrade. Now at S3, we do get a decent jump, but once again, this is just because of star upgrades, not because of anything else that really is brought to the table. So just make sure you keep that in mind, that even though you're seeing these nice green numbers, it's just because it's an A3 weapon, not because of the actual skill from the awakening. Now at A5, we do see that jump where you have 49% better damage. You 49% better at skill damage, but once again, not the greatest numbers in the world. That passive does jump up really, really good, but nothing to really write home about there unless he's the support weapon. Ultimate goes up, and then dodge goes up. And then really where things start to take off is that 6 star, where you can see there's a 50% jump in attack damage. Skill damage, for some reason, did not go. That percentage is... All right, my numbers are off here slightly. I wonder... what is this looking at? Oh, it's looking at the wrong one. Hey, we're going to fix this on the fly. Look at that. Bam, bigger number. We love bigger number, 105%. And those numbers just jump up. But man, A6 is a lot to ask. Free to play can't do that. Light spenders can't do that. And I cannot recommend going A6 for anyone that's not an Omega Whale. And then once you guys see the Matrix review, and I'll just tell you right now, the Matrix is still way better. I guess I'm giving my my final review away. But let's look at that team composition stuff, and I think that's really going to blow your mind. All right, for the team compositions, just to keep this video a little bit shorter, I'm just going to flash up on screen some of the tests that we did. We're not going to actually do a quick showing, but what I do want to show here is that we did test 4 different teams, or I tested 4 different teams. Now, to give a little TLDR, we still didn't use like Lin Yi's skill. We didn't use Nemesis skill. We didn't switch characters to do multiple skills. That's more of a gameplay where I'll go out to a world boss and just like spam through skills, and we can just see how much damage we can do. And let me know in the comments down below. Should I do that? Should I just try and go ham and show that in some video? Let me know. But I think the best way that we can track this is that we essentially assign a primary. And so what we did is we had multiple teams. Like we had Lin Yi, TIAN, Nam, where TIAN was the primary damage. We had Lin Yi, Crow, Nemi, where it was the primary. And then the one thing I do want to say is that we did jack up the weapons to 140. Still no matrices, but 140 across the board. But there's some really interesting numbers I want to show here, is that you can see these attack numbers across the board, that anytime that Crow is the primary, the attack damage is just way higher. I wouldn't say way higher, but it is higher. Skill damage is typically higher. For some reason, sometimes depending on the spin and the rotation, Crows might be better. And then the discharge from Crow is by and large better as well. Now, the one thing that Crow is missing on this number 2, for example, Lin Yi, Crow, Nemi, no passive damage really, no dodge damage without having those Nemi skills out. But you know, TN provides passive damage without having to even bring them on the board. So that's why I had to put passive damage in here. Now, but what you can see is that number 1, where anytime it's TN as the primary, the damage just was not that good. Even when we had Crow in the party. I mean, it was good in the grand scheme of things, like 734 total, 808 total, but that's the lowest, and then the second lowest. The second best, the second place was Crow primary with Lin Yi and Nemi, and then the first place was Crow with TN and Nemi, but it really was not that different. This is without matrices once again, but it's so close. that like that's a C6 TN with a C6 Crow with a C6 Nemi, and that damage, just bringing those together, that damage is so close. Now I'm gonna try and do some more testing and get it on the spreadsheet with me actually running through doing some more of the damage and hitting a lot of these skills. All right, that comes to my final review, and this is based on, once again, napkin math and what I can do here. TN is worth, but it's worth depending on a few things. One, if you're a primary Volt main, you should add them to your Volt comp. Do realize that TN makes a lot more sense once you have Fenrir, where you can do like Fenrir, TN, Nemi. But Crow and TN, in my opinion, are not the two that really line up very well. Unless you're jumping on TN, hitting the scale, and then jumping back over the Crow. It could definitely work. If you do Crow, TN, Lin Yi, right, then you have no healing, and things get a little rough, in my opinion. So, a little bit of my final review here is that, one, if you're going to pull TN, you do not need to go very heavy into pulling stars. You really don't. I think he really doesn't start to take off until A6 or even A5. So an A0 and A1 TN is perfectly fine, but just realize that an A0, A1 TN is not going to outparse your C3, C5, C6 Crow. So you'll still end up probably using Crow, and you'll use TN as a supplementary DPS for support. And then the other thing I do want to say is that I know we haven't seen the Matrix test here, mainly because I need to test it all with Crow and I need to test it all with TN. But TN's matrices are cracked. I mean, I'll tell you in this video right now, if I had to choose between matrices and TN, matrices, those matrices are good. I mean, I'm talking like they almost double Crow's DPS, and you'll see it on the next video. So make sure you guys do like and subscribe for the next video. And that's all I really got. I hope you guys were able to take this away. I hope you guys were able to maybe formulate a little bit of a thought process here. I think a lot of people should wait for Fenrir. That's all I got, guys. I appreciate you guys checking out the video. I'll see you guys on the next video, which is the Matrix review, which should be shortly after this one. Take care, take it easy, and fist bump from me to you.